Today, I'm going to cover what is spiritual awakening and what signs might be showing up in your life that already tells you you are on the path of spiritual awakening. And we'll also dive into the profound connection that creates our soul's purpose, right? Many of us go through our lives feeling disconnected, feeling trapped in our ego, and feeling, in a way, unaware of our soul's purpose. We go through our lives following the ego's purpose, the purpose of what we think it's our purpose or calling in life, or what we've been told to, or what we believe it is the purpose. But if you're disconnected from your essence, that purpose might not be your soul's purpose, and you might not even be aware. And so most of us go through that until we have our spiritual awakening. And until then, the way to free ourselves from these limitations, these conditionings, and experience a profound shift in our perspective of life happens when we are on the path of the spiritual awakening. And let me just tell you, you don't make the choice to go through a spiritual awakening. You don't wake up one day and say, okay, enough of this. I'll dive into my spiritual awakening from now on. That's not how it happens, right? Spiritual awakening, it is a powerful tool, right? It is, you can consider it a tool that allows us to transcend our ego-driven existence and connect with the higher self. But is not a conscious choice. You have the conscious choice to connect with your higher self, yes. If you have that curiosity and you start living in the questions, yes. But it's a shift that happens naturally, right? So, unlike our ego, which is normally attracted to materialistic pursuits, to the external validation, to the external approval, our souls seeks a deeper, more meaningful purpose, right? And that's when you start opening up to connect with your higher self. And it's through the awakening of that spiritual essence, trying to connect with our soul, living in the questions, asking profound questions about who am I, what am I here to do, in a very deep meaning, as I covered last week, that we begin to understand and align with our soul's purpose, not the ego purpose or what we believe because we've been told, but our soul's purpose. So when we start to awaken, our energy, our vibration begins to shift, to transform, we start to heal old wounds because we start to have awareness about those wounds in the first place. And it's like a positive shift starts to happen inside of us as we heal these old wounds, as we get a deeper understanding of things, and we open up for seeing things from another perspective. Plus, we also become more authentic. We no longer align with trying to be somebody else, with pretending just because we want to please other people. The more we start to connect with our souls and find these meaningful things, the more we understand how important it is to be our true selves, to express ourselves truthfully, to live in our truth, show up as we are, right? And we also understand that that is the way to live life to its fullest, because we can't experience living life in its wholeness if we keep pretending, if we are not being true to ourselves, to our beliefs, to our voice, to our essence, and therefore not being true to the people around us. That happiness, that joy, that fulfillment is an illusion. It's not true. And that is one of the remarkable aspects of the spiritual awakening, is when you realize that the way we used to see life, the way we used to view life, was very limited. It was limited to the perception of the ego. And that's why we start to see through those illusions, through those conditionings, through those narratives that no longer serve us. And we also see through the negative energy that once clouded our perception, that once influenced us and dragged us into getting involved in things that it's not part of our soul's path. But we were being influenced. We were buying into the illusion. I believe that, once we go through that soul awakening, we have this moment of clarity. It's like the fog. The fog, clears up in front of our eyes. And that clarity allows us to recognize our disbelief in certain things, especially our disbelief in ourselves as the amazing souls that we are. And recognize and dismantle, the walls, in a way, that separate us from the oneness of the existence. Because we start to understand that we are not separate. We are part of the whole creation. We are all one with nature, with animals, with the cycles, with the universe. We are all one. And we start to break those walls that made us believe that there is a higher self, as in like a god or a source that it's higher than us and is different from us. And so we must fear it. We must comply with it. When in reality, we are. We are all one. We are part of the same fabric. So there is no hierarchy here. We are all part of the same. In a circle, there is like no hierarchy here. I mentioned early that spiritual awakening is not something that you consciously decide one day that you're going to start to embark on. You might decide that you want to connect more with your soul, and that will propel your spiritual awakening, right? That's when you get those wheels rolling. But normally, spiritual awakening happens when we hit rock bottom, when we are going through a dark night of the soul, when we lose the ground beneath our feet, when we are in deep grief, when we feel like we are reduced to nothing. When we go through those moments of loneliness and deep sadness and deep grief and feeling lost, normally it's during those times that spiritual awakening starts to happen, and we are called to follow the purpose of our soul. And each person's awakening is very unique. The way I went through my spiritual awakening might be different from the way you are going through your spiritual awakening. My spiritual awakening started when I had a premonitory dream about my granddad passing away. And my grandma came into my dream to let me know that my granddad was about to transition. And I was very close to my granddad, very, very close. And I knew he was ill, but, there was a part of me that wanted him to stay, like the selfish part of me that wanted him to stay for longer. And I do feel like my grandma came to me in the dream because she knew how I would feel lost. So she wanted me to, I think she wanted me to be prepared. And so a week later, my granddad passed away. And that's when I started to remember that I did have these premonitory dreams before. And that's when I started to remember the things that I started to hide and to bury because I felt not ashamed, but because I was already so bullied at school and I was going through childhood abuse at home. I didn't want to add to it. I don't want it to be the weird one. So I blocked it. For years and years, I blocked that ability to have premonitions in my dreams. And that's when things started to happen, and then the universe just brings more things to propel you in this journey. And then I went through my dark night of the soul when my dad passed away 20 months ago. And that's when things really shifted for me. But for you, it might look completely different. The way you felt lost, the way you felt like hitting rock bottom might be completely different. Might be because, for instance, you've been in a career or a job for 20 odd years and then you made redundant and then you don't know what you're going to do with your life. Or it might be that you spent your whole life raising your children and then suddenly they grow up and they move out, and then it's like you feel a part of you is missing and that you don't know what your role is anymore without the children to be, being around. What you're going to do with your time, what, you're not used to it. It might look completely different to you. And that is completely okay. We are all in our unique journeys. But typically, what happens to all of us when that awakening starts to happen, even though it will look different for everyone, the common thing is we begin to realize that something is holding us back from what is our best interest. Again, it could be a breakup, it could be a job loss, it could be losing someone that you love, or any other significant life events that will push us to reassess our path, that will push us to question, who am I? Who am I now? What am I here to do? And although this might sound really scary, you might be thinking, I don't want to go through a spiritual awakening if I have to go through that shit. Excuse my French. There is a beauty on the other side of it. Yeah. And the beautiful part of it is that what initially appears to be a setback, to be the end of it all, to be a loss, often turns out to be a blessing in disguise. And I find this to be truth for many people, not only me, but for people, clients, people that I've been following. I find this to be truth. It is a blessing in disguise because it's through these experiences that we start to awaken and discover a real connection to our soul's purpose. Sometimes it's when we find our purpose. I truly believe that our purpose is hidden in our challenges. The pain that we go through becomes our power and it gifts us with the experience and the knowledge to then help others. That's what I truly believe to be truth. And it might not be immediately clear to you what your soul purpose is, and and to see what the gain is behind the pain. But by allowing your inner joy, your passions, and your interests to guide you through that dark night of the soul, you take one step at a time towards understanding your true calling. Remember, there is no rush. It's not a race, it's a marathon. You go slowly, baby steps, giving yourself the space and the time to process and integrate what's going on within you. Now, I also want to tell you that even after you go through your spiritual awakening, don't believe that all fears and doubts will go away. That all of a sudden you are enlightened. No. Enlightenment is another topic for another day. But spiritual awakening is the path to enlightenment. However, you will still face fears and doubts. We are humans. We are soul beings having a human experience. And we must remember that. And because of that, the reasons why you were brought to this point in time where you are going through your spiritual awakening, especially after hitting rock bottom, can still linger in your mind. It will still cause doubt and uncertainty and pain. It doesn't go away like that, right? It will still be there. But the thing is, you get to move through it because you have a new awareness and you have a new soulful connection, which will remind you it's okay to feel like this. Allow yourself to feel it and then move through it. You get to do that. And when you do that, what often you will find is that you will find like an inner strength that you didn't know you had. And so when you acknowledge your pain, your fears, your doubts, those moments of that you feel like you went back to the beginning, when you acknowledge and you allow them to transform you, then you continue to grow on your spiritual journey. Remember, always, healing looks like an onion. Imagine an onion. You peel layers and layers and layers. When you peel a layer of an onion, you might even cry, right? You have that reaction. And the more to the core that you go, the more layers that you peel, and the more to the core that you go, the more you will cry. Because the onion becomes more sour, right? And have that reaction. Healing is the same. There's always layers to be peeled. And those layers will be invited to be peeled only when your soul feels you're ready for it. Right? Only when your soul feels, okay, this is time to go deeper, to go to the core. And you will cry again. You will feel all the shit again. You will. Maybe on a deeper level, because the more you heal on a deeper level, it's like the more grief you feel. So your spiritual journey will be like this, one step at a time, one baby step at a time. It's not going to all be gloomy. Like, it's not going to be bad all the time. Of course not. But remember, there are always layers to be peeled with healing. So your fears and doubts will not go away. Your pain is not going to go away. And the trick is not to repress it, ignore it, push it away. It's always to acknowledge it, allow it, and then move through it. In those moments, though, it's important also to remember that your ego will come into play. It's part, as I said before, we are soul beings having a human experience. So in those moments that you are already feeling fragile, your ego is saying, woo, here she comes. And then he steps forward, right? And he'll try to confine you again in that cage. He'll try to put you back in that cage where you are your exclusive self, when your limiting beliefs will come to play, where you feel this distorted perception of the reality. You will bring all those memories that will prove you that the pain you are feeling is real. That will bring you fear about the future because it happened before, so will it happen again. And this is all part of the process. This is all part of the process. And it's important to understand that when you're going through your spiritual awakening, that opens the door to a dimension beyond your ego. It opens the door for that cage that the ego is trying to put you in and confine you in. It will allow you to let go of that lower self, which is the ego, and embrace your higher self, which is your soul essence, which is compassionate, which is calm, which is neutral, which is loving. And when you align yourself with that higher soul, you then experience fulfillment, happiness, and you find meaning in your life. So you get to move through it. It's a process. And when you are in those moments, and for instance, I find myself very fragile when I'm in my cycle, in my menstrual cycle. Oh dear. Before I get really irritable, before, I start to bleed, and then when I'm in my bleeding, I get really fragile, really emotional. So anything that happens triggers me, my old wounds. So what I started to learn, like now that I have that awareness, I started to allow it to move through me and not take it personally. I know when my ego starts, comes into play and starts to feed me these old narratives that makes me feel not good enough, that makes me feel like everyone hates me, that makes me feel rejected, and it makes me feel like I cannot trust anyone. And that's a really big one for me. But because I can recognize it's the ego, I just allow it. I have a cry if I have to. And then I allow it to move through me. And that's when creativity as well comes to play. I allow myself to dive into a creative expression. It might be writing, it might be painting, it might be doing my art journal, being crafty, doing DIY in the house. Those things normally take me out of that space and allow myself to express myself. But again, I know when I'm the most fragile, and during my bleed, I feel like it's when I'm the most fragile. It's when my ego tries to bring everything. That's when I remember my dad the most as well. That's when I grieve the most. And I take things, it seems like everything is happening against me. But I know it's just the ego trying to tell me that is the truth. But having that awareness of my soul and having that connection with my soul. I just allow it. I notice it pass. I notice it, but I don't engage with it. I don't follow it. I allow myself to move through me. I'd like to share with you that if you are on this spiritual path and you want to bring more spiritual wellness into your life, and you struggle to commit to a spiritual practice or to find a spiritual practice that aligns with you, that feels like it complements you rather than stress you, I'm going to very soon open up a challenge, a 14-day spiritual wholeness challenge. I'm taking part of that challenge. I created this because I feel like since the beginning of the year, I have so much going on in my personal life that I've been putting my spiritual practice in the back burner. And as a spiritual guide or soul guide, spiritual practices are part of my work. The way for me to, work on my intuition, channel messages, be a guiding light for others is, having a spiritual practice that I do consistently and that helps me so I can help others. And I've been struggling with that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm in the same journey. Again, the ego comes and say, oh, you have other things to do. You have other priorities. You don't have time for this. And apart from my soul writing that I do every night, meditations and, mindful walks and other things are very sporadic, are not consistent. And I want to bring that consistency into my life. And my soul has been asking me to bring that consistency into my life. So if you two are on the same thing, like if you two are struggling with the same thing, join me. Let's do this together. I created a PDF that has like 14 days with each of these 14 days have a spiritual practice that's very simple, very easy to do. It's not going to take you a long time to do because we know that we're short in time, and that's one of the excuses the ego feeds us. Is like, you don't have time for this. So if it's 5-10 minutes, we can manage to do it. And the idea is to bring consistency. It's 14 days and beyond. So don't feel like it's only 14 days. But for 14 days, I'll give you, and I will be doing this with you, steps. So like prompts. Today we do this. The other day we do this. For 14 days, you have that prompt to help you. And it's a way as well of you finding which spiritual practices you like, what lights you up. Because when it's something that lights up your soul, then it's very easy to implement it. And then it has a tracker as well. It has a tracker, so we can track for those 14 days and beyond. If we've been doing these spiritual practices, and they are not random. These spiritual practices are based on the 3 pillars of spiritual well-being, which is mind, body, and soul. So these spiritual practices are there to raise your vibration and to bring into your life this and balance these 3 pillars so you have a more spiritual wholeness and wellness. So if you are interested, keep your eyes out for the link coming very soon. We'll do this together. My idea is you'll get emails every 2 days to remind you of the challenge. The idea is to have that accountability so we can do this together. I invite you to be on the Facebook group, The Realm of the Goddess, so we can share our tracks, our progress, motivate each other, cheer ourselves up, just keep ourselves motivated. And I might go live every day for 5 minutes to talk about, for during those 14 days, to talk about the prompt and remind you of the prompt. And so we can do this together. Really, like, having accountability, it's so important. And I'd like you to join me, really. I don't want to do this alone. What about if we do a revolution and many people come together and do this together? That'll be so amazing. So keep an eye out for the link coming very soon. I will put it in the description as soon as I have the link for you to download the PDF and to be part of the challenge, to actually get the emails as well. So it has to be a link where you then go into the email list so you can get the emails as well every 2 days. I'm not going to send you every day. I don't want to annoy you. I don't want to fill your inbox. It's just to be your buddy, right? It's just so you know that you're not alone, that I'm here with you doing this challenge with you, and to remind you, like, yeah, today we have this, and to push you to move forward and to keep that consistency, because I know so many of us struggle with being consistent. So if this is you, put a comment below and say, yes, I'm in. Yes, I'm in. Or put your hand up, like an emoji with a hand up, and I will let you know as soon as I have that link.